From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA, two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your Professional Misfits. Hello friends and welcome to episode 6 in Sydney, Australia. I'm your host, Christopher Sellers.
Portland, Oregon, Broedy Ipox.
What up? And for episode 6 on Professional Misfits, we're talking about money today. Yeah, simple. I like money. Broedy, do you like money?
Depends on the day.
I don't know. We're gonna try not to let it get too philosophical too quickly. But like everyone likes money. Like money buys us things, buys us pretty things, takes us pretty places. It's nice to feel it in your pocket. Broedy, okay, walk us through a story, my man. Walk us through your first payday, like your first, I've done a job or like decent payday where you've put a little something in your pocket and you're feeling all right about yourself.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's funny because that was probably a little different for me than most people. I think the general age is like 16 to 18. You get your first paycheck and it like sinks in. It was 14 for me, and I was bucking hay out here. I was bucking hay out here, and I remember it very, very vividly because I'd worked 2 weeks, same as the other guys. I'm the youngest guy there. It's okay to be out there. I knew the guy that owned the fields. Me and my buddy at the end of 2 weeks get handed $1,500, and I almost crap my pants.
At 14.
At 14, I was like, "What the hell am I supposed to do with this?" It was amazing. So my first paycheck, that was blown on fucking junk food, video games. all
it lasted a week. Yeah.
Maybe less than.
Wow.
Realistically. And so the first one, it was my real first look into excess, right? Like where it was like, because I didn't have the needs and the wants and the actual typical desires.
Word, no, please go on.
And it was maybe not the best first experience, you know what I mean? Because then you kind of build that expectation moving into the next, and then I'll
so easy, Broedy,
Oh my God. And then I'll follow into this. My first real paycheck, I was on a payroll and working for a company. I was pumping gas, and I got that paycheck, and that paycheck after 2 weeks was about $1,500, and I was like, what the fuck just happened? It wasn't under the table. It was taxed. It was the big boy paycheck. It was the real paycheck, and it was a shot to the heart because I was like, oh wow, you know what I mean? Because then you start paying attention to hours, you start paying attention to wage, you start paying attention to overtime and things like that, and it was like that excess felt so much further out of reach than I had ever even realized was the the actual story. So
that was amazing before and after.
It was rough. It was rough.
That's really, it's really, really interesting the way you framed that. That's fucking cool, actually. Yeah, and then but you're an adult now. Like this is what grown-upping is.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You do your hours and you get your tax, and now you know what everyone else is complaining about.
Yes, exactly.
That's really
and that's what it felt like, right? That's what it felt like. And it was one of those things where you watch a movie and somebody relates on something that's not necessarily fun or comfortable or great. And even though there's that oh cool, I'm part of this thing now, there's that underlying almost sense of tragedy that you're part of it. You know what I mean? You're like, oh shit, I'm really in this now.
Yeah. This sucks.
Yeah, fuck. Okay, I get it.
This is why everyone looks forward to Friday. This sucks.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was an interesting one for me, because I had a little bit of experience with something that I probably shouldn't have, and interestingly enough, there's a work age here in the U.S. and it's 15, and
Okay.
I'm a year before that. You know what I mean? So it was under the table. It was something. You know what I mean? Making way more money than I should have at 14 years old, and there's reasons for that, right? You know what I mean? Let's not set the expectation low, but let's set the bar where it is. You know what I mean? Because then I think when you have a little bit more realistic expectation of what you're going into, you're not going to go look for that pumping gas job right away. You go, okay, maybe there's something I can do within the spectrum that I can hit that excess that I was feeling before, and I can carry that with me.
That's. I mean, we're already getting way ahead of ourselves. So before I jump all the way down there, I'll try and find one of my. Okay, so I got my start in hospo. I got my start as a dish bitch in a cafe,
Okay.
and I think it was even my uncle had to sort of like pull some strings with a client to get his nephew in as a 17, 16-year-old dish bitch at a cafe in a mall. So it wasn't even, but I at least I came in with the right ethic. It's like, if I do the job, if I work hard and do the job, then then they'll keep me and all that sort of stuff. And then I think it was almost my first experience at being what is known as a Christmas casual. So do you have these in the States? Surely.
Christmas casual. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe not the
you
coin
probably maybe a
term.
different
Tell me.
term, but it's like when hospo stuff or like retail or anyone, like when they need staff over Christmas because there's more customers, you just hire casual staff to kind of get
Oh
you
yeah,
through.
yes, okay,
Right.
yeah.
2 or 3 months, and then once it hits January 1st, thanks
Bye.
for your time.
Yeah, see you later.
Not even like, we just don't roster you. So here I am as like 16, 17, coming back to check the roster, and I'm like, oh, I'm not on it this week. Oh, okay. And you kind of feel like you're just cut from the team with no explanation. But of course, I don't know what's going on. So just no shifts this week. Oh, okay. I come back next week.
Oh no.
I know, man. And then there's still
so
no shifts. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I think after about then, I realized I don't think they've got any more work for me. But that was a couple of shifts a week. It was okay for pocket money. I don't remember really being significantly affected by it. I even in and out of cafes. At some point, I was managing a place down on the beach, and even when I was working full time and putting away a full time wage, at the time that was for a purpose. It's like, I'm saving for a year before I go to London. You know what I mean? So the money was for a purpose. It was, I'm gonna save 10 grand. I'm gonna do this and that. Like, so when I leave, flights and everything cleared, 10 grand Australian in the bank, and then go overseas. But I think the first, kind of to your point, what this episode is really about, but the first time I noticed my perspective change due to a sum of money was probably the first commercial I got paid for.
Okay.
Because it was a national ad, and it was about 10 grand Australian for a non-speaking role. Right. Yeah. And it was two days of work, maybe like a day and a half, like shot over 2 days, 2 different locations. But it was a lump sum of 10 grand. And so you shoot the thing and you're like, cool, that's done. And you have that sort of nervous wait of like, when am I going to get paid? And then, 2 to 3 weeks later, my agent sends me a quick email saying, hey, this has gone into your account minus her 10, 12%. Good job. And I check my bank account, and there's like, bang, lump sum of like 8 something grand. And your term excess, that was, because even then I think I was even late 20s, maybe early 30s, but it was just like, what am I supposed to do with that?
Exactly.
It's like, as a sum, it's too little to buy a car. As it's too much to pay rent. All right, like so you just sort of stick it in the bank and go, okay. I think even at the time I put it in the bank and then took a screenshot of my account, going, that's real. Like, that's my money. And it was sort of one of those moments. And I go into my little imaginary brain goes, I guess this is how the other half live, because if you're doing like a commercial or whatever else here and there and getting paid this amount and you've got all this, like, what would I spend it on? And like possibilities tend to open up, and, I would live here and I'd do this and I'd travel and blah, blah, blah. So that was, yeah, excess. It was interesting. I guess the difference is, because we're into episode 6 now, people might have been listening to us for a little bit. I mean, you and I are motivated. We're not necessarily motivated by money, and I guess I was going to ask this is like, for us, for anyone, yeah, money's nice. It comes with all the trappings and it buys you things. Like it's a means to an end. The sort of deeper question sort of underneath this is, well, does money motivate you? Does the chase for like a bigger number or whatever it happens to be, does it motivate you? Does the deal motivate you? And if we're talking about money objectively, like, is it the win? Like, are you a gambler? Is the thrill of the chase and gambling, does that motivate you? And I think we touched on this briefly in episode 1. About like chasing that bag and people who do on the purpose of work. But specifically, I guess, well, even for us, like, you've got to pay rent, we've got to pay bills. Broedy, you've got mouths to feed. So does money motivate you? Or a top list of 3 motivators, is money there? Is the requirement for money there for you?
Yeah, me specifically, yeah, that's an interesting question, because I mean, you touched on it a little bit. I think for you and I both, there's definitely a motivating factor that is not tied to a monetary value, right? Like it's something deeper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but am I willing to lie to myself and say, is the
it doesn't matter,
right?
I'm above that, my principles, and like, yeah, they've got a place, but and a lot of principles can be waived for the right amount and the right conditions. I guess. To shift perspective a little bit. I mean, we've talked about our folks at times. So for my old man, like, I get he well-paid engineer, I imagine, I can only guess, but for him, the prime motivator obviously was stability. Now, for a lot of us in careers and a lot of us this time of our life, like, money equates to stability, right? And so then we'll we will pursue the job or the education or the career that will provide stability. Right. So money in and of itself, may be an indicator, but it's not the be all and end all, right? For some people, for me, it would be independence and autonomy. So that's kind of tier 1 for me. And so the type of roles and work that I do, and then the rate I charge for that, is to maintain my independence and autonomy, you know what I mean? And then hopefully, to travel and do all the rest of the things once things pay off. But is this making sense?
Yes, no, it is. Yeah, it is. And like I said, I think that's the question, right? Are you willing to admit that, even with those things being separate from money, that like you're talking about, the connection to it is what you're fundamentally progressing towards. And yeah, that's me, man. Like, I mean, truly, like, if I was doing something that I was passionate about and my family was fed and cared for, sure, I could probably live in a cardboard mansion and be okay with it. But at the same time, it's like you're talking about, there would always be a piece of me that would want more for them and for myself, and fundamentally that's achieved with money. And so yeah, I'd say if you had to say in the top 3, yes, so for me it'd be Honestly, stability. Stability is huge. Number one, and that's the kind of the family aspect of it is.
Yeah.
And no matter what happens, just as long as they're taken care of, that's a huge motivator and driving factor for me. And then number two is, we've talked about this a lot, passion. Am I lit up? Am I feeling what I'm doing? And that's I'd say number two slot. And then number three, the means to the end, money. And I know that objectively, right? So yes, like we're talking about, there's those other motivating factors that are attached to it, but I also know how important fundamentally that is, and I know what it can do. You know what I mean? So yes, money is a definite driving factor for me as well.
Do you think one's perspective on finances is shaped by their upbringing? I know that's a simple, well, yes, obviously, but the reason I ask is normally, like, my old man sort of worked his way out of what would be probably lower socioeconomic, like studied, got a sponsorship to go into the Navy and all the rest of it. So worked his way up and out. So again, like, I think stability was his main driver, but money obviously played into that. So that would have been at sort of the forefront. Very risk averse and takes care of his investments and all the rest. Then there's the probably the more wealthy or the ultra wealthy who probably don't, who I imagine would have a different view on wealth and finance and capital, how to leverage that, what it means, what they would use it for, and whether it's having capital to leverage capital for more capital. Or is it, or is there another way, or is there something else that motivates? So, I mean, maybe we might be presenting a slightly biased point of view because we come from probably like similar, different sides of the world, but similar values.
Yeah.
And money, the pursuit of money is probably not a primary driving motivator. But I guess for the people in our audience who are, in their 20s, just starting out, want to make a bit of coin, or like don't want to waste their time, or find something that's satisfying. And in the world of social media, Broedy, that's your world, where it's all Lambos and fat stacks and Cristal in the club, and or my world where it's everyone's, what is it, a fucking digital nomad in Thailand working with a mojito on the beachside. You know what I mean? So what's being sold is, this freedom, carefree, passive income lifestyle. But underneath that is like, well, you need finance to
get
make
there,
of this happen. Yeah, right. So
there's a wild delusion, I think, with, especially like, one of our big things is the, I think, facade that people enjoy presenting, because again, it comes with what I think a lot of people for a long time has viewed as status, right? But it's also like we're talking about, underneath all that, what people are coming to understand is that it actually took a lot more work for those guys to get to the beach in the mojito than they're letting you believe. And that does one of two things, and it can be a really good thing in my mind, because look, it opens up the world to, let's be a little bit more honest here. You guys do have a great life. You guys have things that would be enjoyable for any human being, but in that same sense, don't act like it's been butterflies and rainbows the entire time getting there. And if it has, let's make it safe to assume that you don't have the standard experience that somebody else would have trying to attain that. So I think it'll level the voice, right? I think people will start to...
It's that classic thing of like social media is generally only ever the highlight reel. So it's their Insta post like, I'm arriving in Thailand, I've just showed up in Ubud, like da 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 da. Like they don't show the 14-hour flight because that's tedious as fuck. They don't show you the 7-hour layover in Singapore, and you're sleeping on the floor because all the hotels in Singapore airport are already booked out, and you're not on the VIP membership. So, find a quiet, cozy corner and curl up. And I remember this specifically because that's what I posted when I went to Chiang Mai, because we stayed over in Singapore. There was
You posted the trials, or you posted the?
No, I posted the trial. I posted like, here's a picture of me sleeping on the floor in the airport like waiting room, because even though my friend had a membership with whoever it was, the hotel they have at the airport was already all booked out, and tough luck.
Yeah.
So VIP membership meant nothing. So we're wandering around at like 3 a.m. in the morning, already after like a 7 or 8 hour flight, tired. Like we've got 4 or 5 hours. It's that awkward period of like, we could stay up for 4 or 5 hours, or we could try and sleep, sleeping on the floor. Yeah. And like, just to get to Chiang Mai and spend 2 weeks there and then come back. And sure, the experience was great, but it's not, precisely to your point. Like it's everything on the spectrum. It's not just flying VIP, baby. Yeah.
Well, look, it's a good example too. If you go to my LinkedIn and you look at one of my first posts about my home office, it's an angle of my desk, and it looks very clean, and it looks like this could be a very cool, big, wide space. Okay, well, the following week I decided to post what it really looks like, and it's a 6x10 box. Okay, it's a 6. Yeah. I can literally touch both of my walls with the size of human being I am. Yeah. And you know what I mean. I could have hid that from the world. I could have kept that to myself and acted like my desk and my space and the highlights of this space were the only pieces.
Was your private sound booth? Was your private sound booth in your little back office away from the main compound? Yeah.
Exactly. I could have, but what's funny, and I was going to ask you too, have you felt in your experience that sharing the authentic side of what you're going through, whether that be with money or be a flight to an airport or building an office, which again, all these are tied to the same facet, value, are you valuable in this experience that you're having? And it's like, it's just an insane thing to me that we've attached a dollar amount to those each facet, so the more vulnerable and authentic you've gotten, do you feel like you've been received at a higher level, or vice versa?
Yeah, good question. My initial response is no, but I'll qualify this, because it's generally authentic in the best sense of the word, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. It's sort of like hitting a Tibetan singing bowl. It strikes a rather pure tone, and the things with most pure tones is they separate shit out awfully effectively. So when you say, have you been received at like at a higher level or whatever, the real, I'd argue that the real work is with me. So that's one. If you're not doing it for self-indulgent, ego-driven purposes, like look at it, because, so much of authentic posts on LinkedIn or anywhere is just trauma porn and like, or virtue signaling and like, look how deep I am. Look at like what doesn't kill you just makes you stronger and like this sort of shit. Right. But you and I know, and some people might know, like I talk openly about mental health and my mental health and my sort of personal journey. It's not a risk to me. I don't feel, it might be vulnerable at times, but I don't feel threatened or damaged by it. And it's hopefully it's not trauma porn, but the way that I share it is to show that, look, my experience is different to yours, and that's okay. And it's going to be different to everybody's. So if we can openly talk about it, and whatever it happens to be, and sort of reduce this stigma, then I'm already making the world safer, better, happier, more positive, aren't I? And if you can't take it in that vein, then you're probably not my people. So it's got to start with me first, I would argue. But whether it attracts more people, I don't know. Whether it attracts the right people, I'd say it can't help but to. And money's also a tricky thing because like not a lot of people in in most societies we don't openly talk about it, and whenever startups or CEOs or whoever get on and or Insta influencers get on and they're like, we made this much we made this much revenue and whatever else. Like, how much profit did you make? What's your outlay? What did you raise?
Exactly.
Like,
it's
over
just
what
a
time?
continuation of the highlight reel.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So you can cherry pick highlights to make whatever case you like. And unfortunately for me, it's even to the point where even if you show me like, here's all the things I failed at, and here's the thing where I succeeded, and here's how we made it, I'm still, and it's the Australian in me, I'm still coming with a healthy dose of skepticism. Like, so what are you selling? And what do you want from me?
Well, I don't. You say that. That's the Australian in me. I think that's the human in us because I think, like, like we're talking about, that same vein of authenticity, right? You show me what's underneath that polish. I have the same questions. Why though?
Yeah.
And I wonder too when people listen to the podcast, what they they inherently think. What are these guys trying to pitch? And
yeah, that's a good point.
And it's funny too because again, there's going to be shameless plugs. I talk about my social media. You talk about your book. There's
t-shirts coming, folks. There's amazing designer t-shirts coming.
Well, hey, I mean,
limited edition.
Stay tuned.
Limited edition. Get on our mailing list now. Yeah.
But no, I think more of what we're doing is going to come to light, and I don't know how that's going to affect every industry, finance, media, entertainment. I couldn't tell you exactly, but again, I think it's just that underlying tone of honesty. Are you being honest with me? It doesn't even, each piece doesn't necessarily matter if it's not honest.
Yeah. All right. So I've got a question since we're digging into this and we're talking about money. Like, have you ever been in a position where you've been, like, say, envious or jealous or resentful or of someone who had more? Like, whether it's particularly money, like, dude shows up in the nice car, nice threads, buys everyone dinner, drinks, any experience like that.
Yeah. No, I'm human, right? I'm human. And seriously.
Good answer.
And when I first started this whole social media thing, there was kind of that exact instance that you're talking about. I had been doing this for a couple people. I had made enough money to understand that it was viable, and then I hit some stuff that was kind of out of my scope. And I'm an honest guy. So, I told that client, this is out of my scope. And what was very unique about this experience was they took me along with them in the search for more, and that ended up being another individual. And, guy rolls up, he's in a Beamer, he's fucking dressed swaggy as shit, comes in, he's got all of his deliverables ready, he's, calm, collected, looks like he knows what he's doing, and I remember thinking, I do the same shit as you, and I don't look like this. I don't carry myself. Why? What's the fucking difference here, bud? And
why
we
not
get down
me?
to the meeting, and I'm sitting there. Again, picking myself apart, picking this guy apart, like down to way past the media stuff. I don't even I'm not even retaining anything anymore. I'm just trying to figure out that one piece. I'm like, I just don't, I couldn't get it. And, he gets in there, he asks for way more than I would have even conceived was a possibility, and, confident in his information, confident in the things he's asking for, and, and I understood it was, this guy literally doesn't have anything different than me. Nothing. There's fundamentally, I mean, if you took it on paper, we have the same exact experience. We have the same exact tactics and strategies. His deliverables look similar to mine. It was that he believed in the value that he was presenting past the monetary side of it. So
Right.
in essence, it wasn't just what I'm delivering to you, it's I believe in me. You know what I mean? So you're going to feel that too. And because again, it wasn't that he talked better than me. It wasn't that he was, had more information. Half the time, honest to God, when I was breaking down what he's saying about social media, I was like, you're a fucking twit. Like, you don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And it, like I said, it was just that he believed in what he was saying, and since then, I'm not even kidding you, since then, the envy in that situation and realizing that what I was envious of was confidence, not the monetary value, was it was wild. Because again, I thought was it the beamer, was it the clothes, was it this, was it that, and it wasn't. It was just that this motherfucker believed in what he was saying, and I should too. And I, for whatever reason, I hadn't granted myself that permission. And was that from the fact that I hadn't made the same monetary value this guy had, or whatever it was, but it was a big shift, that's for sure. Envy fucking knocked me right on my ass. What about you? I feel like too, like you kind of expressed in the, in the acting world, it's such a dynamic field to where you can go 2 days of work and you're rolling in $8,000 of money.
And then you don't hear anything for the year. Yeah.
Right. But you looked really good when you got that $8,000.
Right. You did. I mean, untouchable. Like untouchable for a week, and then it's back to the grind. Look, it's an apples for oranges comparison. It's because you can't put any two actors aside. I guess if you train, that's step number one. If you train and you spend any time professionally training in the arts, you weed through this shit, because you'll have to, of like, what do they have that I don't have? All this awful self-comparison. And then you professionally learn to put it aside, because you go, look, you and I are different. And, I can only ever work with what I have and, leverage what I can at that time. The rest is not within my control. It's an awfully scary, but also empowering mentality to have. And that's where you treat all auditions, and whether you get paid or not. So you can't, here you go. I went to college with a kid, I was more the introverted kid, the sort of dark loner in the back of the room. He was the loud clown. And fair to say that he didn't learn a thing in the 3 years of acting college, but he was always the loud clown and like charismatic and popular and all this sort of shit. Left acting college in Sydney, I think went to LA, was a Power Ranger for 1 season, maybe 2, I'm not sure. Came back to Australia, got a few TV gigs, did a few bit parts in movies, was even voted like Cleo Bachelor of the Year 1 year, all this sort of shit, what I mean? This guy. And I know him. And then, you look at that, and when he made this sort of success, everyone was like, oh, of course he was. He was always going to do something great. You know what I mean? He was always, because he was loud and charismatic and all this sort of stuff. Now, it's fair to say, if we fast forward 15 years or so, he'd be unheard of now. And I'll make a prediction between you and I and everyone listening, Broedy. Like, I'm probably more going to be recognized now and for the rest of my life than what I've done in the last 15 years. Right. So even then I knew that I wasn't this guy, but could still be envious of what he achieved or the contacts that he has. And again, like, why him?
So envious of the circumstance and not the person.
Yeah, but and the opportunity or whatever, but sometimes that's in your head as well, because we will make up the reasons why we didn't get the thing as opposed to somebody else a lot of the time. Right. But there's, in regards to money, it's interesting. I don't know, like, I'm always the kid that's sitting in cafes and writing. So even early on, I was aware that cars and suits and the club wasn't my scene. And that's normally what money and the lifestyle is attributed to. And that was never my scene. So what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to fake that? I know it makes me unhappy, or just kind of stick to what I'm doing because I enjoy it here. And, so I guess it was never really a motivator for me in that way. And I was never really that type of guy, but there's still, I don't know, there's, of course, you meet people who are my age or contemporaries, and they have the house, they have the car, they have the lifestyle or whatever. And I won't say it's regret, but it's sometimes I really objectively wonder, like, is that how it's supposed to be? Is that how I should have done it? Is that how I should have done life? Or even look at my parents, you know what I mean? I'm at the age now where they would have had teenagers and they would have both had full-time careers, paying off a mortgage, 2 cars, pets in the backyard, all of that sort of thing. It's like, is that how it's supposed to be done? And there's no real answer to that. But to where this gets interesting, and you touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of status, like money and status and how that's related, is I stumbled across this the other day, and it's really, really interesting. Have you heard of the man in the car paradox?
No, I have not.
Okay, right. Get ready for me to blow your mind. Everyone else at home, if you're standing up, sit down. Here we go. So the man in the car paradox was conceived by Morgan Housel. It's from his book, The Psychology of Money. And it's an experience he draws from when he was a valet at this like very fancy hotel. And basically, you're a valet. A lot of rich and famous people pull ups in Bugattis, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, whatever, you name it. Always very impressive, always a bit of a show. And he'd go and park these cars. But he'd noticed that he would never look at or never take note of the person who was driving the car. So what happens to us is when we see the car, we're like, fuck, that's cool. Like, that's impressive. If I had that car, I would impress people. But then when the driver gets out, no one takes notice because you associate it with the car, with the thing, right?
Wow.
So, right. And so even when you get the car, and you be driving around in it, no one's looking at Broedy going, I want to be impressive like Broedy. They're like, I want to have the Ferrari to be impressive. And it's a real backwards logic, but a little bit what we've talked about. And when you look at social media and when you look at much of the game and the career paths that people play, it's like, I want to get the thing, achieve the thing, to be the thing, right? Without any sort of realization or recognition that, for my old man, it's stability. Money can contribute to that sometimes, but not always. For you, it's, stability and passion, and like money can contribute or run side to that, but might not necessarily be the thing. And likewise for me, it's autonomy and freedom. And so money can contribute and be a part of that, but it isn't the be all and end all. So yeah.
No, and look, I think that's the beautiful thing. If you guys as the listeners take anything away from this episode, it would be that there is permission to place value in other parts of your life and your interests. Monetary gain, like we've talked about, has its functions in life, absolutely, but it doesn't, in my opinion, define your value. And the people that it does are the ones playing off a highlight reel. And I'll tell you this too, as big as their highlight reel might be, right? If you look at the moments of actual joy in their playback feed, probably way less than you, so you have something that they don't, you have that value that the thing that people are attaching these things to are looking for, and what a wonderful, thing to leave people with is you guys have the permission, you know what I mean, to fundamentally decide is it money or is it passion? Is it autonomy? Is it stability? And those things become your driving force. And again, money then becomes a tool, and it's almost more helpful in a sense to view it in that way, as opposed to, like you're talking about, an end all be all. Because then again, once you achieve that and you realize that that's not it, there's that disappointment again that we talked about. You know, your expectation is shattered, and it's just
Yeah. Look, there's I'll cite my friend Robbie, the Swedish Jesus. So shout out to Robert. Shout out to Robert Anderson, who wrote a book. What makes a leader? No, who makes a leader, not what. And so it's about internal leadership. But the reason he wrote this book is because, like, Robbie, I hope you won't mind me sharing this part of his story because it's in his book. Ever since from the age of 16, Robert grew up in Sweden and decided at 16, I want to be a millionaire. Done. And driven individual, achieves his goal, like gets to 1 million, and now he's like, okay, I'm a millionaire, now what? He's like, I'm not happy, there's still more to do, I need more millions. And so sort of commits to that, and then after a while burns out and realizes, well, this isn't working. So quits it all and ends up going backpacking around New Zealand and sort of all the rest of it, and has all these weird and wonderful adventures, and then, you know, reestablishes what's going to be true for him. And so I think his is an example of where money is often a very convenient, easy, tangible, relatable starting point. Of like, if I want to build a life for myself, or if I want to take care of my family, or if I just, you know, if I want a little independence and empowerment for myself, we'll get some money, get some more money. And that's an okay, absolutely valid place to start, and necessary in order to be, you know, mature and independent. It's a nice starting point. There are other starting points, and there are other pathways you can take, because, you know, we were talking about money previously in terms of status. You know, for some people it's the car that's the status, or the house that's the status, you know, or the suburb that you live in that's the status, or the girl that you date and marry, or, you know, or you marry the lawyer and he's the status, you know. So it's a really worthwhile question to ask, and chiming in what Broedy was saying, is like, is the money or the thing or the person or the role, like, what is that actually representative of? Like, is it going to give you respect? Like, if so, from whom?
Yeah.
Is it going to provide you safety? If so, from whom? Robbie made a really excellent point with me personally one time when he asked me, you know, like, give me a figure, Chris, of what it would take for you to feel safe. Right? I'm like, bro, like, it's a big figure. And he's like, that's okay, like, throw it at me. Like, I've heard big figure. And I think I quoted like 70 million or something like that. And he's like, okay. It's like, well, that's 7 with a whole bunch of zeros behind it. It's like, I can tell you from personal experience, whether it's, you know, 1 million, 2 million, 7 million, it's not going to make a difference if you keep chasing more. You know, because if you can't find satisfaction or the peace in the little amount, having more of the same thing isn't going to deliver the result you think it will.
Right.
And, you know, I had to swallow that for a moment, and then a week later I'm like, fuck, you're right. And it's changed a lot of my perspective, especially over the course of how I navigate this year and what I'm doing and who I'm working with and why. And that, substitute that logic for, you know, supermodels or fast cars, or, you know, high value men, or, you know, living on the beach, or whatever it happens to be. You know, what is that representative from you? And if what you're really chasing is respect, then, you know, develop your self-respect first, and then by proxy, people will come to respect you. You know, if what you're chasing is freedom, then find ways for you to find freedom in what you do in your life already. And then by proxy, you'll find that, you know, freedom starts to seep into the rest of your life. So yeah, money is not the root of all evil. Perhaps like ignorance and greed is more, the root of evil, and money is sometimes associated with that. But yeah, final thoughts, B?
Yeah, I really love that, man. I think what stuck out to me at the beginning of what you said was I think the most important for people right now, and especially look, the environment is changing. We've got Russia and China coming in with the yuan being the reserve currency. We've got Bitcoin and crypto. We've got so all of this at in an administrative level, right? It's going to look wildly different. I think the most important piece for people right now is, and you said it perfectly. I think you said reestablish your truth, and that's what you got to do. You know what I mean? You've got to decide. Look, is this where we're at, and is this the value that I'm searching for and chasing, and is that going to get me the end all result that I'm looking for, because I think a lot of people would realize it's not. You're right. It's not money. It's not money that's going to get me there. It's going to be who I'm working with, what I'm doing, how I get there, and everything in between. And if I lose sight of that for the monetary value, I might very well lose sight of what's important.
Yeah. It's it feels like one of these conversations that we've just sort of scratched the surface of, and we'll come back to another time in a lot of different ways. Feels like a nice place to wrap up episode 6. Now, looking ahead to episode 7, do you know what we've got coming up for episode 7, Broedy?
It's a guest. I know it's a guest.
You're very good, very good. We're talking about work and traditional gender roles, and if I can manage it, if she's free. I'm bringing in my friend Jahan. She's a criminal defense lawyer. Funnily enough, I spoke to her the other day and about the podcast, and she's like, "Oh yeah. Sorry, I've got 2 murders on this morning in the Supreme Court." And only a criminal lawyer can just say that while she's getting her takeaway coffee. So yeah. I'm like, just text me and we'll do the thing. I'm like, great, babe, I'll do that. So that's what we'll be talking about in episode 7. Should women stay in the kitchen? Should men go out 9 to 5 and hunt and kill and bring home all the bacon? It'd be interesting getting your take, my man, because you got kids. You gotta be a man. You gotta provide.
Yeah, I've got kids, and we'll touch about this in the episode too. But I've also taken the time to help build out my partner's dreams and passions as well. So
nice guy.
I've got a little bit different take on the whole thing.
I bet you do. In the meantime, where can folks find you, Broedy?
Head to professionalmisfits.com or promisfits.com and
no, we're Pro Misfits Podcast.
Pro Misfits Podcast.
promisfitspodcast.com. Got a shiny new website.
Please, because the website's clean. Chris did an amazing job on that, you'll find everything you need there. You'll find everything you need there.
That you can find. Brody's got his TikTok, he's got his LinkedIn, he's got all the things. And likewise, you can find me on promisfitspodcast.com. There's my links there with all my stuff. Find me on LinkedIn, find me at my website. You can buy my book and we can have a chat. In the meantime, it's been real. I've been Chris.
I've been Broedy.
And you stay classy, Misfits. We'll see you on the next one.